Alright, so I wanted to make this just to kind of wrap up the previous parts of this video. And I've left out quite a bit. I shouldn't, not a lot of different stuff, but one I feel like was a key factor in the discovery or coming to the idea that I'm trans, and that is the fact that I was miserable. That is an important part of the story, and I think I just assumed that you would already know that, or that I assumed that you would assume that I was unhappy for my entire life, but maybe you wouldn't assume that, and that was a big part of it. I sometimes wonder if I were happy, if I was enjoying my life, would I have realized that I was trans? And it's difficult to answer that question because I've never been happy. But it started when I was a kid. I don't ever remember a time ever being happy. I mean, I've had good memories. I've had experiences that I cherish. The sad part is that most of those were drug-induced experiences. Playing in a band, I play musical instruments. Playing in a band while high, while under the influence, was one of my best experiences. Playing a drum while I was on LSD was one of my all-time high experiences. And it's sad to say that, I think, but there was never a time when I really felt good about myself. I did not enjoy the things that most people enjoy. High school, I had a pretty terrible time in high school. I didn't get along with most people. Didn't have friends, didn't get invited to parties. College was okay. When I went to college in 1994, and after high school at NC State, I think it's partly because I was young, because I've been to college a few times, but none of them compared to the first time. The first time was the best. That could be, that was, I shouldn't say could be, that was because I stayed in a dorm with other people my age and with my interests, and I actually had friends for a little bit. But starting as a kid, I did not feel good about myself. And people might say, well, that's because you're trans. Trans don't feel good about themselves. They experience dysphoria. But from my perspective, it was more because of my family issues. My parents were not together from my earliest memories. I don't remember a time when my mother and father were together. They were divorced when I was 3, and of course I don't remember being alive at 3. I think I'm not even sure what year I first remember. It might be 4 or 5, maybe. But I was living in Chapel Hill with my mother and my brother in my earliest memories, and I remember fighting with my mother quite often. I remember feeling like she didn't like me. I remember feeling like she liked my brother better. And she sent me to live with my father after I got into a fight with my brother. It wasn't even a fight, really. We were playing tic-tac-toe and he cheated, and we were using a wheel about the size of this mouse. It was like a grocery cart wheel. We were using it to make marks on the sidewalk, and when he cheated, I took it from him and threw it at him and hit him in the back with it, and she sent me away. And that hurt. I guess it goes without saying that it's basically I lost my mother. She sent me away, and she kept my brother for a little while. She sent him eventually, partly because I asked for her to send him, and partly because she kind of gave up on the idea of being a mother. And she kept in contact with us for a while. We would see her on Christmas and during the summer. She happens to live down at the beach, which was fairly nice because we'd go visit her and go to the beach. but over time it became quite obvious that she really wasn't interested in having a relationship with either my brother or myself. And if you were to ask me at that age, why are you unhappy? I would said most likely it's because my mother doesn't want me. I was living with my father then and his new wife and their kids, and I did not feel integrated into that family. I felt like I was a tag along. I felt like I was if the family was a house, I was like a shed out on the back of the property, or an add-on to the house. I wasn't actually part of the house. I wasn't part of the original structure, so to speak, and I didn't enjoy it. So that, from my perspective, that was my problem. I felt like what I needed was a family. I felt like I needed a mother and a father, and who were together, and that kind of thing. So the any other issues like being trans was, if like I mentioned before, that when that came up, so like with the example when I call myself granddaughter, I imagine that part of the reason that I dismissed that is because it was just something that I didn't really have the space to deal with. It wasn't the sort of thing that I would have gone to somebody like my father and said, I think I might be a girl. And it's just because I already felt like I had too much to deal with. I'm not saying that was my reason. I don't know that was my reason, but I suspect that it was. But it didn't end. When I got to college, even though I had friends, I was still unhappy. When I got out of college, I was even more unhappy. When I got out of college, I was suicidally depressed. I learned about drugs in college. I learned about Robitussin, especially marijuana, alcohol. And when I got out of college, I came back to live with my dad, and I went to work in a warehouse. And I was not interested in learning things. I was really not interested in having a successful life. I was interested in getting drunk and getting high and that kind of thing. And it led me down the toilet. I mentioned previously that I joined the Army because of that. After I left college, I mostly hung out with people who like to get messed up, and I used to call it partying, but it really wasn't partying. It was just getting fucked up. In some cases, I was the only one getting fucked up, and I just happened to be around people who allowed it, or who were kind of okay with me getting fucked up while, they sat around talking, which is a little bit embarrassing to say, but I just didn't see a way out of it. A lot of times I would be depressed and I didn't even know why. I don't remember how old I was. I think it might have been before college, actually, that I told my dad that I was stressed out. And he said, how can you be stressed out? You don't do anything. And that was kind of how the whole thing was. I mean, the whole unhappiness thing was. It was like, it got to a point where I felt like my mother giving me up was no longer a reason for me to be unhappy. I felt like I should have gotten over it. Or, I don't want to say I should have gotten over it, but when I felt unhappy, I don't feel like that was the cause of it. I felt like I wasn't thinking about it. Like I wasn't thinking, God, I wish I could be with my mother. God, I miss my mother. It was more like, God, I feel like crap. I don't really know why. And that went on for years and years and years. And that was partly one of the reasons that I was using drugs all the time, is because I wanted to escape being sober, because being sober sucked. And it didn't have to, like I said, there didn't have to be a reason. It didn't have to be that I had a bad relationship with somebody, or that I had a bad job. It was just existing was a cause of anxiety. And I was totally unable to relax. Like I could lay in bed and just try to relax, and it was like my insides were almost like shaking in a way, and it was just I didn't know where it came from, and so that is I'm saying that because that is when I discovered the trans thing. That's kind of when things kind of came into place. That is kind of, like I said before, that is when I felt like I had found the root of my problem. I felt like all those years that I spent unhappy, all those years that I spent being miserable and being afraid of people, because it wasn't just the depression, it was a fear also. I mean, it was a fear of being myself around people. I felt like if I were to be myself around people, that they would reject me. That I felt like if they could see into me, they would see something that was just despicable, disgusting, and they would leave. And if you were to say, well, it's because your mother dumped you, I would say, well, that totally makes sense. But when I saw myself as trans, that kind of added to it. So I mean, it could be both. It could be that my mother dumped me, but seeing myself as a woman kind of twisted that narrative a little bit for me. So I don't see it as, maybe I do have to get over my mother leaving me, but still, but